My stepbrother spat the words right into my face while my entire family watched in silence. You're nothing but a weak single mom, Clara. You have no leverage, no money, and no man to protect you. He laughed, tossing an eviction notice onto my coffee table, convinced he'd just ruined my life and stolen my daughter's inheritance. He thought because I wore floral dresses, worked from home, and spent my evenings packing school lunches, I was an easy target. What Chad didn't know, what my arrogant stepbrother failed to research, was the background of the quiet family friend standing right behind him in my hallway. Exactly 9 seconds after Chad smirked and stepped into my personal space, he was flat on his back, staring up into the cold, unwavering eyes of a retired Tier 1 Special Operations veteran holding legal authority to shut him down forever. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Clara. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 3 years, my entire world has revolved around building a safe, quiet life for my 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Being a single mother isn't easy, but I've always taken pride in standing on my own 2 feet, working from home, managing a household, and keeping my late father's memory alive was more than enough for me. Or, at least it was, until my father's estate finally entered the last stages of probate. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Lily was quietly coloring at the kitchen table when the heavy oak front door of my home rattled. Before I could even reach the entryway, the door swung open with an aggressive bang. Standing on my porch, shaking off his wet umbrella like he owned the place, was my 32-year-old stepbrother, Chad. Right behind him stood his mother, smirking with the same cold entitlement she'd carried since the day she married my father. Chad didn't wipe his feet. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just marched directly into my living room, unbuttoning his tailored suit jacket with the predatory confidence of a man who believed he was entirely untouchable. In his right hand, he clutched a heavy leather briefcase. He tossed a thick stack of legal papers onto my coffee table, right next to Lily's crayons. "Pack your bags, Clara," Chad said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The free ride is officially over." I stared at the papers on the coffee table, then up at Chad. "Excuse me?" I said, keeping my voice steady for Lily's sake. "This is my home, Chad. My father made sure of that." Chad scoffed, taking a step closer until he was looming over me. "Your father was old and confused, Clara. You're nothing but a weak single mom. You have no leverage, no real money, and no man to protect you or handle actual business. You think working from home makes you qualified to own a piece of Dad's legacy." He pulled a document from the pile and slapped it against his palm. "This is a quitclaim deed. You're signing over your share of the house and the family business to me today. Otherwise, I'll drain every penny you have in court until you're out on the street." From the kitchen doorway, a quiet, deep voice cut through the tension. "You're standing awfully close to her, son." Chad froze, turning his head toward the shadow of the hallway. Sitting at the small breakfast bar was Marcus. To Chad, Marcus looked completely unassuming, a quiet, silver-haired man in his late 50s wearing a plain canvas jacket, drinking black coffee. He looked like an ordinary contractor or a handyman doing home repairs. Chad rolled his eyes, letting out a harsh, arrogant laugh. "Who the hell are you? Her babysitter? Mind your own business, old man." Instead of answering, Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee and set the mug down without making a sound. Chad turned back to me, his face twisting with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing my desk by the edge and slamming his hand down inches from my face. "Sign the paper, Clara, or I swear." Chad never finished the threat. In less than 3 seconds, the air in the room shifted completely. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't rush. He simply moved with a terrifying, fluid efficiency. Before Chad could even draw his next breath, Marcus was standing directly in the space between us. Chad scoffed, instinctively trying to shove Marcus out of his way. "Get your hands off me, old man, or I'll..." In 6 brief seconds, Chad's arrogance evaporated into pure shock. With absolute precision and zero wasted motion, Marcus grabbed Chad's outstretched wrist, twisted his leverage, and swept his lead foot. There was no chaotic struggle, no shouting match, just the dull thud of Chad's body being guided firmly to the floor, his arm pinned cleanly behind his back. 9 seconds total. Chad gasped, his cheek pressed flat against the hardwood floor. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'll call the police. I'll have you locked up." "You could try," Marcus said quietly, his voice dangerously calm as he reached into his jacket with his free hand. He flipped open a dark leather wallet, placing an official badge and credential card directly in front of Chad's face. "My name is Marcus Vance. I'm a retired federal special operations operative, currently serving as the chief security consultant for Vance and Associates, the firm officially managing your late father's corporate assets." Marcus leaned down, his eyes like steel. "And right now, you are committing felony extortion on private property." Chad's mother let out a sharp gasp, stumbling backward against the front door, while Chad lay frozen on the floor, staring at the silver badge in total disbelief. "Let him up, Marcus," I said softly, stepping around my desk. "He needs to hear this standing up." Marcus released his grip and stepped back smoothly, his posture relaxed but ready. Chad scrambled to his feet, adjusting his rumpled suit jacket while trying to regain whatever dignity he had left. His face was flushed red, a mixture of rage and sheer humiliation. "What is this?" Chad spat, glaring between the two of us. "You hired a bodyguard, Clara? Is that supposed to scare me?" "Marcus isn't a bodyguard, Chad," I replied, my voice steady and cold. "He was my father's closest brother-in-arms from their military days 30 years ago. When my dad realized his health was declining, he knew what kind of person you were. He knew you'd come after me the second he was gone. So he called Marcus." Chad scoffed, though his confidence was noticeably shaken. "So what? An old war buddy can't change Dad's will. The estate belongs to the family." "Marcus isn't just an old friend," I said, pointing to the thick black binder sitting on my kitchen counter. "He's a certified forensic security consultant. For the past 3 months, while you were busy celebrating Dad's passing and picking out new sports cars, Marcus and I have been auditing every single financial transaction you made in the family business over the last 2 years." Chad went completely still. The color slowly drained from his face as his eyes darted toward the binder. "Did you really think," I added, "that I was just sitting here passively doing nothing?" I walked over to the kitchen counter, picked up the thick black binder, and brought it back to the table. I set it down right next to Chad's useless quitclaim deed. "While you were busy calling me a weak single mom who couldn't handle real business," I said, flipping open the first tab, "we were tracking where the money actually went." Chad's mother tried to step forward, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. Chad has run your father's company honorably for over $400,000, Chad." Marcus interrupted smoothly, his voice low and cutting. He tapped a high-resolution printout inside the binder. "Wire transfers from the corporate reserve into 3 separate shell accounts over 18 months. You thought moving small increments under 10 grand would bypass the internal audit. But you forgot one simple detail. Clara's father held sole signature authority on those accounts." Chad swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he stared at his own forged signatures printed in crisp black and white. "You didn't come here today to claim your inheritance, Chad," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You came here because you knew the court probate was closing next week. You realized that once the court reviewed the final ledgers, your embezzlement would be exposed to the state prosecutor. You thought you could bully me into signing a quitclaim deed to cover your tracks." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "It's a classic move, but a pretty foolish one when you're dealing with federal forensic auditors." I paused for a second, turning directly to the camera with a quiet, knowing look. "Have you ever had a relative think they could step all over you just because they assumed you were too weak to fight back? Tell me your story in the comments below." The quiet in the living room was suffocating. Chad stared down at the audited bank statements, his chest heaving as the last remnants of his arrogant composure completely collapsed. His stepmother tried to speak, but no sound came out of her mouth. She was staring at the paper trail that linked her own personal accounts to Chad's shell companies. "So," I said, leaning against my desk with my arms crossed, "here are your options, Chad. Marcus stepped forward, placing a fresh legal folder on top of the black binder. Option A, Marcus stated calmly, his voice ringing with absolute authority. Clara files a formal complaint with the district attorney's office by 5 o'clock today. Given the clear evidence of grand larceny, wire fraud, and systemic embezzlement from a family estate, you'll be looking at federal charges. The paper trail is bulletproof, and with your signature on these forged documents, you'll be facing a mandatory minimum of 10 to 15 years. Chad's mother gasped, clutching her son's arm. You can't do this. We're family. Option B. I cut in, looking straight at Chad. You sign a full, unconditional surrender of any claim to Dad's estate and business. You formally resign from every position you hold in the company, effective immediately. And you agree to a structured civil repayment plan to restore every single dollar you stole under Marcus's firm's direct oversight. Chad's hands were shaking violently now. The man who had walked into my home 10 minutes ago calling me a weak single mom was now reduced to a trembling wreck. He looked at Marcus, searching for any hint of hesitation or bluffing. But Marcus just stood there like a wall of solid granite, waiting. You have 30 seconds to decide, Marcus added quietly. Chad swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. Give me the pen. His mother tried to pull his arm back, but Chad brushed her off. He grabbed the pen from the table and hastily signed his name across every line of the surrender agreement, forfeiting everything he had spent months trying to steal. Chad dropped the pen onto the table, grabbed his briefcase, and practically sprinted out of my house without saying another word. His mother scampered right behind him, slamming the front door as they fled into the rain. The silence that followed was peaceful. Marcus picked up the signed documents, checked every signature with a practiced eye, and nodded. Everything is legally binding, Clara. The business, the home, and your father's legacy are completely secured. You and Lily are safe. Thank you, Marcus, I said, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. For everything. He offered a rare, warm smile. Your dad was proud of you, Clara. He always knew you had the strength in you. After Marcus left, I walked back over to the kitchen table where Lily was still quietly coloring her picture. She looked up at me and smiled, completely unaware of the storm that had just passed through our living room. I sat down beside her, wrapped my arms around her, and smiled back. Chad thought calling me a weak single mom was an insult meant to break me down. What he failed to realize is that being a mother didn't make me vulnerable. It gave me something worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you enjoyed this journey of poetic justice, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to click on the next video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story.